Hey, this is Ken with Rocket Family KML. Doing another video. We're going to do a video on staging. I have read a few posts where people were having problems with rockets not staging like they wanted to. And this is going to be a black powder staging, which is relatively simple until you get into the AP and electronics for staging. Then it really gets complicated. So black powder, don't be afraid to stage black powder. Just remember a few basic steps. Now, there are different types of engines for doing staging. Obviously, the number is important. A staged or a booster motor will have a 0, so it'll be like a B60 or a C60, D12 E90. The 0 means that there's no tracking charge or smoke or recovery deployment charge, and that's important because you're not going to ignite an engine with a recovery deployment charge, and the fact that it's coast past apogee is arching over, and if it ignites, then it's going to come in like a lawn dart. So we have to pay attention to our motor types. So again, your booster motors they're going to be a 0 instead of a number like 1, 3, 5, like our normal delay charge designations. So we're going to switch cameras here, and then we're going to go into the different types of hooking the motors together, how to do these different hookups. Okay, so again, we have our booster engines, and they're always going to be designated. Like here we have a D12. So that is a booster, and they're generally also going to be red in color to let us know that it is a booster. Like a lot of our upper stage motors, the nozzles are actually a little bit different to accept the incoming propellant from the burnout of the motor to ignite it a little bit better. And they're generally going to be a purple color, but you can stage with green motors too. So what happens is the motor ignites, burns through the propellant, and at the top, instead of the clay cap or anything else, that's propellant right there at the top of the motor. So when it burns the hole through, pieces of hot propellant fly up into the next motor, and it's going to go in and ignite the hot gases, and pieces of propellant are going to ignite the next motor. So we have to make sure that we connect the motors together properly, otherwise that will not occur. Here's another motor that's a booster. This is a C60, and again, it is just like the other one, black on the top. There's no clay charge. Here's a D. It's easier to see on the D. That's the clay cap covering the ejection charge. So you got your tracking smoke, ejection charge, and then the clay cap. So again, it's really easy to tell that it's a green motor. So that'll let you know that it's a main stage motor, D12.5 in this case, or D12.5 in this case. Here I have a spent C65 that I'm going to use to demonstrate how to connect two similar sized motors, or 18s in this case. So what do we do to connect our motors? There's a lot of different things you need to remember when working with your motors. One of them being, we want to make sure that we connect the motors in the right direction. So a lot of times I'll take a marker and I'll grab my booster motor and I'll mark an arrow pointing up. Now this is a ballpoint pen, so it doesn't show up as well on screen. But now I have an arrow pointing up, so I know that's the top of the motor. Now on my other motor, my nozzle end, this is my main stage, I'm going to do an arrow down. So I know I want my arrows to go together. So on a 2-stage, that works out really, really well for me. If I'm doing a multi-stage, I'll just mark the top of the motor. So I know that that's pointing up, or I'll put a big B for booster with a black marker. And I'll always set my motors up in the way I want them to go. And I'll put them on the table the same direction that I want them to go. So after I've made sure I've got everything lined up, I'll lay it down, make sure I'm going the right way, or I'll just make sure I work left to right. So come up with a system that works for you on how to make sure you're staging your motors properly. All right, what do we need for staging motors? Well, a lot of times you're going to be friction fitting your motor, so you're going to need regular old-fashioned white masking tape. I don't use the super thick. I go ahead and go with the shorter half-inch tape. I mean, it's a little bit more than half-inch, 3/4 inch here. Half-inch, 3/4 inch is good. Much thicker, and you're going to be fighting yourself to get the rocket engine into the body tube. The next thing we're going to need is going to be Scotch tape. Scotch tape is going to be used to join the two motors together. It will come apart on the injection or the burnout, and the ignition of the next motor forces the two apart, and it breaks very cleanly. So let's go ahead and show with larger motors how we're going to do this. Well, we're going to pull off a piece of tape, and we're going to make sure it's long enough to go all the way around the motor, and we're just going to set that off to the side somewhere. I got a little piece stuck right here. So now I've got my tape ready. Normally it's stuck to the edge of the table or wherever you need it to be. We're going to check our fit for our motors. So here I've got my F.I.T.S Air Commander. We're going to take the two parts. Here's my upper motor going into the upper part. So I'm going to check for fit. Is that a snug fit or is it a loose fit? Now that's a pretty loose fit. So now I'm going to need my masking tape. I don't need to tape both ends of the motor. The old way was to always tape both ends of the motor, and you can do that if you want. It's not a necessity. Little secret, I point this out frequently. How do I keep my tape to where I can just grab it right off? I fold the end over. So yes, I lose about that much tape every time, but it's a lot better than fighting for the end of the tape. So I'm going to pull off a little bit of tape, kind of guesstimate how it felt, and you'll get better at it as time goes of guessing how much you need. So fold it over again. So now I got that little tab to grab on if I need to. And we're going to wrap it around the motor. Now I know that my motor stops at a certain distance going up because it hits the engine block. So I need to be at least past that line. If you're unfamiliar with your rocket, go ahead and shove the engine all the way up and just take and put a pencil line where it meets the engine tube. So now I've got a little mark. Now I know I have to be above that mark to get my friction fit. So we're going to take the tape and we're going to put it above the mark just a little bit. And you can see there we got the mark and we're above our mark. And we're going to wrap the tape all the way around the rocket. And that's about 1.5 wraps, 1 3/4 wraps. And we're going to see. Yeah, that's fairly tight now. A little bit too tight, tighter than I need it to be. So I'm going to pull it out. Kind of shoved it in there hard. Okay, so now, since it was a little bit too tight, we'll go ahead and take a little bit off. And remember, don't force the engine in. Don't push super, super hard, because if you do, it's going to be that much harder to get out. And if you damage the engine, it's not going to be any good for flight. Now, how do we destroy an engine that we've damaged or don't trust? Soak it in water. Just drop that baby in water and let it sit there for a couple of days, pull it out and throw it away. Grind it up, crush it, whatever you want to do. Once it's been soaked in water, it's no longer going to work. So we're trying again. There's a little bit better fit. Okay, I like that fit better. So now we're going to pull it out and we're going to test fit our lower motor. Now I do keep pliers on hand for pulling out spent motors, but I'm not too worried about, see, that drops in there really easy. I'm not too worried about damaging a motor that's not got propellant in it. Once you use the motor, if you damage it, no big deal. If you damage your rocket pulling it out because you squish the tube or something like that, that's a big deal. So now, since this engine's being inserted from the top, I want to put the tape close to the top. So I'm going to make sure I'm far enough down. I'm just going to have to eyeball it. And okay, push that out. We'll wrap our tape around. Now we've got our tape nice and smooth. Oh, got a couple wrinkles in there. We need it smooth, so we're going to pull it off. Stretch it tight. Make sure you don't have wrinkles in there because that will mess it up. Now we're going to slide it in. Okay, that's a firm fit, so I'm happy with that. Pop it back out. So now we've dry fitted the motors into the two parts. Now again, we're going to double check. Booster, it's red. Our main stage is green. We don't want to put the main stage to the booster. We want to put the booster to the main stage. So you look at your nozzle, look at your black powder. That's the way it goes. In this case, remember, I marked with arrows. There's my arrows. So we're going to tape them together. So I'm going to put a piece of tape on the upper. I'm just going to attach it a little bit. I'm going to take my lower, again looking to make sure nozzle, clay, or propellant to nozzle, and I'm going to wrap the tape around. One time only. I don't need any more than that. And you can break it off with your finger. That's all I need to hold the motors together to create the ignition. when the one stages to the next. So now in the instructions it says insert into the upper. So we're going to do that. We're going to seat it, and I'm slid it back up to my line, so I'm happy about that. Now we're going to slide on our lower. Nice and tight. Okay, now we're on. So now all we have to do is insert our igniter, take it out to the pad, set it on the pad, and launch it. No problem with that at all. Next, we have our Comanche 3 extra large, or upscale size. I love this rocket. I have yet to fly it yet. It's my daughter's, and we're looking forward to getting it out and flying it with our Club Washington Aerospace Rocketry Club. Let's put it out of the way. Okay, so Comanche 3 extra large. I love this rocket to death. It starts off with a D, goes to or 24, goes to an 18, goes to an 18. So we're going to be using a D booster, and then any 18 millimeter booster. That could be a C or a B. If you want to lose the rocket and send it up to like 1,700 feet or whatever, go ahead and use the big motors all the way through. But you're going to lose your rocket that way. Okay, things we can do to make sure we have a successful flight with this rocket. And something I didn't show you with the Ds. Sometimes you get a burr around the edge. I keep sandpaper in my launch box. I have coarse and fine. And I'll take the sandpaper and I will lightly go around the edge to take that burr off. Another way to take that burr off is on a hard table, roll the engine. Don't roll it this way. Spin it while holding it in place. And that will take the burr and push it back over so that this will slide into the body tube without having problems. Much easier. Okay, so now let's set up for our Comanche 3. So we're going to be staging from a D motor to a C motor in this example, and then to a main stage C motor. So we need to make sure that we have everything set up the proper way. Our D is going in the bottom stage, so we're going to check it. It has a motor block up here, so we want to make sure that that's a little bit tighter in there. So we'll go ahead and we'll take our masking tape and we'll do a little wrap around the bottom of the motor, and we'll check it for fit. Now I know I don't need quite that much tape there, so now we'll check it for fit. There we go, nice and tight. Okay, so now that's set. We don't need to do anything more with that motor. The reason we need to make sure that this motor fits in there tightly is if it's a loose fit and we get the ejection charge fires off, or not the ejection charge, but you have burnout with ignites the next motor, it could potentially blow just the motor out. And if the motor doesn't come out with the fin assembly, guess what? It's going to burn up on the rest of the way up. So we want to make sure that we don't have that happen. So we're going to make sure that that tape fit, that friction fit is tight enough to make sure that the motor blows out and the bottom stage blows out. Now we have our next two stages. We got to make sure that we have everything pointed the right direction. We have our ignition point with the igniter. Now we have our booster and our main stage. So we're going to go booster to main stage, same way. Now we need to make sure that they fit properly. So let's check our fit. Well, this is just going to slide completely through. There is no engine block, so that will slide completely through if we want it to. And that's actually a fairly tight fit in there, so I'm not too worried about that one not coming through. We can take and put a little bit of tape on it to make sure it stays with the rocket. This also means that the stage will drop straight down and not flutter way off in the distance. Okay, so we got our fit there. Now we need to do our upper level fit, our main stage. So we're going to slide that in. Actually, there's our main right there. And you can actually slide the motors in and leave them in the stage that they're going to go into. A little bit more tape for that one. So again, this one I'm going to put the tape on the lower part because that's where the engine fits in from the bottom going up. So if I put the tape on the lower, I'm not shoving all this in there with tape on it. Just the lower section has to slide in with the tape on it. Okay, smooth it out. You can have scissors in your launch box to make cutting this tape a little bit easier. That's still a little bit loose, so we'll put on a little bit more tape. Make sure it's smooth, got some wrinkles. There we go. That's a better fit. Now we're going to pop that out. There's our main stage. Here's our booster, a little bit of tape on that. Make sure it fits properly. So we're going to go ahead and put the tape on the top of this one because of the way we insert it. Make it easier to stay in there. We've got the tape. Tear off the excess. Let's see how that fits. That's good tight. Okay, now we're going to put our motors together. Again, we have booster to main stage. So booster, main stage. Our tape is all smoothed out. Get our Scotch tape. Pull off the length, and again, it can be longer than what you need. You can trim off, but you can't add on. And we'll tape a little bit to the edge of the rocket. So now I have a little bit taped onto the motor. We're going to, again, check to make sure we're going propellant to nozzle, not nozzle to nozzle, not nozzle to propellant, or propellant to propellant, because that wouldn't work right. So we're going end to end like we're supposed to. Tape it on. You have to pardon my rambling. I tend to do that sometimes, but now we got the tape rolled all the way around. Break off the excess piece. That's why we like using Scotch tape. It's easy to tear. Now, we're going to insert this into the main, or the upper. Slide it in until it stops, so we're all the way up. Now we're going to insert our next stage. Now, our fins didn't perfectly line up on this rocket, so what we did is we did some markings so we know where to line up. There's a little black mark there. It's going to match this little black mark here and that one there, so I know my fins are straight and not off-canted to each other. Okay, this rocket motor has a burr on the bottom, so now I'm going to roll it to take care of that burr on the bottom. And let's try that. Okay, that's a little bit better. So we can slide them back into each other again. Let's make sure we got them lined up. This burr is really causing some trouble there. So we'll roll that off. Got a little sandpaper here. Okay. So upper stage. Now we're going to put this lower stage in. There we go. And we're going to make sure we seat fully, so we are fully seated. Now we already loaded our D engine in, and it's bumped up into there. So now we're going to line up, and this is on the Comanche. Regular 2-stage or 3-stage. If there's a 3-stage, this is where you tape the bottom engine on, and then slide the 3rd stage up into it, just like we're doing now. And we're going to push and make sure everything's seated properly. So this engine actually sticks out the distance required to make contact with that motor. And now we've got our staging set up. Put our igniter in, take her up to the launch pad, and we're going to launch her. So again, we want to make sure that when we're staging rockets, we remember which is our booster and which is our main motors. We don't want to connect a upper stage motor to a booster. We want to connect the booster to the upper stage. That way we get proper ignition of the motor. And don't be afraid to double check, triple check, because what's going to happen if you don't do that right is your rocket is going to nose into the ground, and we don't want to do that. So remember, read your motor numbers. Make sure if it's the booster, it has a 0 to let you know it's a booster. D12 0 here, C6 0, and then check your upper stage motors to make sure you have an upper stage motor and you haven't mixed them up and you're accidentally putting the booster on your upper stage, because then you won't get deployment, you'll get a melted chute. So I hope this helps, gives you a little bit better information on how to handle staging of rockets. Again, always make sure you're checking your booster motor to your main motor. You want to make sure you get the ends the right direction, not the wrong direction. Otherwise, you'll have a lawn dart. My daughter had that happen with her Estes mongoose. So check your motors. Make sure you got them going in the right direction. Make sure you have the boosters on the bottom, the main on the top, and pack in your chute. Be sure. Wake up that chute. I tell people all the time, wake up your chute. Pull that parachute out, open it fully, flap it in the wind a few times. Make sure your shroud lines are untangled. Make sure that shock cord's good. Hey, make sure you put in the recovery wadding. When I RSO at launches, I always make sure that they walk up and I take the rocket and I look at the rocket and I look at them and I say, do you have recovery wadding in this rocket? It's a simple question, but sometimes people go, and they can't remember, did they load it or did they not load it? Safety first, so let's always be safe about that. So again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and comment. Let's share our hobby with other people. That's the way we promote this hobby.